Assalamu alaikum, sister. Thank you for writing to our live session. I'm sorry to hear that you're having sleeping problems. Sleeping problems can be common depending on, age, stress levels, things that we may worry about, sometimes health conditions. But I think in your case, your experience of, falling asleep and then thinking in your imagination that your sister was awake when she was actually sleeping too, was probably, a result of you on your way to sleep, as they say, right? So possibly you could have been in, the first stage of sleep, which is stage 1, right? It's NREM stage. And stage 1, you become very relaxed, which may be why you felt weak. And there's an increase in the brainwave activity for the theta waves, right? That just means that you're just starting to fall asleep, your body's relaxing, and you are sleeping. But if people are woken up during this stage of sleep, they think they have not been asleep, right? It's like they've been awake. They think they have been awake, but actually they were starting to go into a deeper level of sleep, which is stage 2. So it's a possibility that you were in stage 1 sleep, and when you felt that your sister was awake when she wasn't, and then you felt very weak, that was because you were relaxed, right? And when people are extremely relaxed, it's hard to move. It's hard to, get yourself fully engaged in awareness and movement. So that can make it even feel stranger, right? So, yeah, but you were probably just, starting to fall asleep. At your age, and in the early 20s, right, beginning late teens, early 20s, a lot of times people, young teens and young adults start thinking about death, right? Because you're transitioning into another phase of life, right? So probably in a year or two, you'll be graduating from high school, possibly, going to college or working. And all of this is like added responsibility. It's a transition out of childhood. And usually around this time, some people start thinking about death and dying, right? Their mortality hits them. It's common, for young people to start, thinking about death and fear of dying. The only issue that comes into motion, right, is when it becomes like an obsession, right? Like when you think about it all the time, when you develop a fear that prevents you from doing things, and if you become terrified, obviously, right? So naturally, older teens, young adults starting to think about death and dying is a natural process of growth and development and intellectualizing, their lifespan and realizing, how life does go on and, time is limited. However, possibly in your case as well, I am kindly suggesting that you also see a mental health counselor. And the only reason I'm saying that is because you're discussing trying to get back on track as far as, relaxing, being able to sleep, because you've developed the fear where you can't sleep now, right? Because you fear death. And that kind of signals that it may be turning into something like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, or intrusive thoughts, or possibly anxiety disorder or panic disorder. I'm not really sure because you didn't include a lot of detail of how you were feeling. But, I'm sure everything is fine. But just to rule out any panic or anxiety disorder or OCD tendencies starting to develop because of this, I would just go to a therapist or a counselor near where you live and get an assessment and just explain to them kind of what's been going on. I'm sure everything is fine, and I'm sure this is definitely going to be a passing phase. But the problem is, like, sometimes things happen to us, and we fixate on it, right? And it becomes intrusive thoughts, and we think about it all the time. And the more we think about it, the stronger the fear gets and the more it builds up. And actually, it gets like blown way out of proportion, right? So say somebody drove over a bridge and they almost drove off, and that triggered a fear in them. And so now that they won't drive over bridges, right? Because they have fed into the fear. They've thought about it all the time. They're afraid of, falling off the bridge or driving off the bridge. It kind of like, it escalates, right? So that's why I'm, suggesting now, while it, if it's just starting, to go in and get assessed and to get treatment for it. Treatment is very, very successful, right? And things like this are common. People develop irrational fears worldwide, and sadly, though, like a lot of people don't get treated, so they live with these fears for decades and decades, and it kind of like robs the quality of their life because they stop doing things that they once enjoyed or they were able to, right? So, I kindly suggest, sister, that don't worry about it. And I know that's easier said than done. I understand that, but just to make sure that you're not developing anxiety or anything else, please just go in and get an assessment done. And if anxiety or panic or anything does come up with the assessment, treatment will be offered, and it's very effective, and you could deal with it now and resolve it and move on with your life, right? Because this is not something that you want to be living with, correct? So in the meantime, yes, get back on track with praying and repenting for any sins and asking for Allah's mercy and forgiveness and for His blessings, and ask Allah to help you, through this difficult, scary time for you. I can imagine that was a very scary feeling, and just ask Allah for His kindness and mercy and guidance, and to remove this fear from you. In conjunction with counseling and making dua and getting back on track with your prayers, inshallah, this will be behind you soon, right? And like I said, around your age and older, mid-20s, early mid-20s, a lot of young people do think about death and dying as a normal process of maturing and growing and intellectualizing and realizing, the shortness of life and how precious life is. But again, I don't think there's anything to, really worry about. But not sleeping every night because you're afraid is a concern. And so, inshallah, please do seek out counseling in your area, get assessed, and address this as soon as possible. We wish you the best, sister.